Hey guys, Bushcraft 412, and what I want to talk about today is getting your handgun ready for a shit hits the fan or SHTF scenario. Well, let's just say this, guys. In this video, let's assume this isn't a Hurricane Katrina. Let's not assume this is Hurricane Sandy or an earthquake. This is the big one. You know, grid down, entire country in chaos. You know, where you're going to need to be on your toes. You're talking possible martial law, fighting, killing, looting, nationwide, no escaping it. So that's the kind of scenario I'm setting for this video and how to prepare your handgun for that kind of a situation. Now, when you purchase your handgun, we often forget, you know, especially those of us on a limited budget, that the gun is about half of what you're going to spend. You know, you're also going to spend additional money on magazines and holsters and accessories. So it's always important when you're picking out a firearm to consider those things and make sure you have that in your budget so that you can afford all of those extras on top of good ammunition. So here's my opinion on the subject, and this is kind of like a bare minimum as to what you need. Of course, you need the firearm. You need a good amount of magazines. Here for this one, I got 4 magazines showing. I feel like that's not enough. I think for a true shit hits the fan scenario, you really want like 10. So, I mean, but these magazines are 30, 40 bucks a piece, so it's something I'm working on. You know, I'm just going to buy them here and there as I get extra money. So, you yourself as well, you know, if you're designating a firearm as that go-to gun, you should be looking and buying extra magazines every chance you get. That's a given. Number 2, you need something to carry these magazines on you. If shit hits the fan, you do not want to be walking around with a bunch of magazines clinking around in your pocket like Kramer on Seinfeld when he had like that $20 worth of pennies in his cargo shorts walking around. You know, you don't want magazines clanking around, making noise, difficult to get to. You want a good, solid carrier for them. Even a simple product like this $17 Uncle Mike's Kydex magazine holster. Very simple, very easy. And of course, you're only limited by your own budget. There are far better ones on the market than this cheap Uncle Mike's. So get what you can afford, get what's comfortable to you that you can wear. There's all different varieties and types, and make sure it's something that, of course, fits well. You want it to be something with good retention so that your magazines aren't going to fall out while you're running, jumping, or crawling through the mud. You want, you know, a good quality product. On top of that, you're going to want 2 holsters for your firearm. And once again, guys, my opinion, I know some of you are going to disagree, and that's okay, but my opinion is that you should have a hip holster, something you can put on your hip, and preferably something that can hold an extra magazine. So in this case, I can have 1 in the firearm, 2 in that, and then 1 in the holster. So this is for open carrying, or maybe carrying under a jacket or under a large shirt. Concealed but easy to get to. Now this one here is a very, very cheap, you know, probably a $20 nylon one. Once again, you're limited by your own budget. If you can afford a really good quality, get a good quality one. Holsters are something that the more you pay, the better quality you get. So I don't always recommend being cheap with holsters, because especially if your life may depend on it, it's something you may want to put the extra money into and get a good quality holster that's going to be fitted to the firearm, keep the firearm stable, and is going to protect it enough where you never have to worry about negligent discharges or anything like that. The other holster you should have, of course, is something for carrying concealed. This here is just a little generic inside the waistband holster that fits numerous guns, but it just happens to fit this Ruger actually quite nicely. Once again, this cheapo little $10 isn't going to cut it. You know, you're going to want to spend the extra money and get a good inside the waistband, maybe one of those hybrid tucks, something like that, where you can conceal it very easily, because you may not want to be advertising that you have a pistol on you, or maybe you're carrying something else, a rifle, and you want this as your backup. But holsters, quality, you always get your investment back in quality with holsters, so I don't recommend going cheap with holsters, even the slightest bit. You know, I mean, you don't have to go crazy, but there's a lot of good Kydex holsters out there, a lot of good nylon stuff, and a lot of good leather. Try them out, see what your preference is, and make sure you practice with them. Take them to the range with you and use them, because if shit's a fan, if you've never used any of this gear on the table here, you've never loaded from this, you're not going to be comfortable and you're not going to be able to do it fluidly. So practice, practice, practice. And finally, probably the most important thing is ammunition. Now guys, one of the funniest things I always see from preppers, and what shows me a noob prepper more than anything, is when somebody shows you their entire ammo stockpile and they do not have one single self-defense round for their handgun. It's all full metal jacket. Now, it's a whole nother video between full metal jackets and self-defensive rounds, and hopefully you guys already have a basic understanding, but you need to have good defensive rounds for this gun. If you want your life to depend on it, and you are, you know, if this is your shit hits the fan gun, you're likely going to use it. Your odds of using it are very, very high. Do not be walking around with full metal jackets in there. Okay, maybe you want to keep 1 or 2 magazines with full metal jackets. That way you have added penetration in case maybe someone's behind a barrier or something like that. But run-of-the-mill, people are going to be, you know, gunfights typically happen, what, 7 feet away, and most of the time people aren't wearing body armor or hiding or anything like that. It's kind of a face-to-face ordeal. Make sure you have good ammo, guys. I hate to see it. I hate to see these videos where these guys stock up on 10,000 rounds of full metal jackets and they don't have one good hollow point bullet or one, you know, one good bullet. And you don't need a ton. You don't need 10,000 rounds. What you need is enough to fill up all your magazines at least once. Because odds are you're not going to have time to reload in a gun battle. And even then, odds are you may not be carrying loose rounds with you. So odds are when you run out of bullets, you're going to run away or hide or whatever. So I highly recommend make sure you get a good quality ammunition, enough to fill your magazines, and also enough to practice with it. You have to make sure, number one, that your gun feeds this stuff flawlessly. And number two, you have to make sure that you're comfortable with it. If you sight in your gun, your firearm, your handgun, you go to the range and you only shoot full metal jackets, and then you pull in one of these hollow points, which is like, this is like 124 grain hollow point, it's going to shoot differently. It's going to have a different point of impact. You're going to be off on your aim. You really need to practice with the rounds you're going to be carrying. And if you put all of this together and you practice with your setup, drawing the firearm, using the ammunition, using the accessories you have, and even if it's anything fancy, like if you have a laser or a light or a tactical light, and those are all great things to have as well, you know, because they're only going to help you in those situations. You know, for example, this gun here has a rail, but I've just never bought any kind of a light or anything like that for it, which I guess, having this video now, I guess I kind of got a new shopping list, something else to purchase. But, you know, if you can afford the light, get the light. If you can afford the laser, get the laser. Bring them to the range and practice with them. Practice with them wherever you can. If you can go into public lands and practice them in a setting outside of a range where you can do a little motion, that's great as well. We tend to get a little caught up in going to the range and shooting from a perfect stance, standing position at a range. You know, sometimes it's good to go to the woods and shoot bracing against trees, shoot from behind a tree or behind a fallen log. Get yourself in positions that you may actually be in a defensive situation. I tend to do that a lot. I'll go to the woods, fire from behind a tree, brace against a tree, you know, hiding, you know, somewhere, you know, just anything to bring a little reality into your training is always a good thing. Plus, it also helps you and make sure that your firearm is going to fire under all conditions. Guys, if you only go to the range on nice, warm, sunny days, you will not know if your firearm will work good in, you know, freezing cold, snowy conditions. You don't know if your gun's going to operate properly in a torrential downpour. It's always a good idea. Throw on the raincoat on a rainy day. Bring your pistol out to the woods. Find a nice secluded piece of public land where you can safely shoot, and practice in the rain, practice in the snow, practice in the mud. That's how you make your firearm a true shit hits the fan go-to gun. Some guns can take it. For example, your average Glock, will run flawlessly under almost any conditions whatsoever. Other guns are temperamental. Some guns don't like to be fired at weird angles. Some guns don't like to be fired, with a loose grip. So if you're out there in the rain and your hand gets slippery, it's kind of like limp wristing a little bit. The gun gets slippery and slides around a little bit. It can create like a limp wristing effect. Do you need an extra grip like I have on this P95 here? I have an extra grip because actually if this thing gets wet, it gets a little slippery. So I put one of those Hogue over molded grips on it, and it really helps in wet conditions. So you need to know that firearm. We really do. We tend to just go to the range, nice warm sunny days, and we don't practice with it. We don't do any real training. And guys, I'm not talking about doing the nothing fancy thing and throwing on all your camo and running through the desert and doing these run and gun drills. I'm not talking about that. You got to build up to that kind of thing, but start just real easy. Set a target up, go to the grocery store and get a bunch of melons, set them up in the woods, and practice shooting different distances, engaging different distances from behind objects, moving, side to side, forward, backwards. Practice these things in a safe, controlled manner so that when you do have to rely on that gun for a shit hits the fan scenario, you are familiar with your gun, you're familiar with your accessories, you're familiar with your holsters, you're familiar with any fun things that you've put on your gun, any lasers, flashlights, anything. And you're comfortable. Going to the range and putting 10,000 rounds of full metal jacket through this gun does not prepare you for anything. You need to practice with your live rounds. You've got to do all that. So, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope I give you something to think about.